Well, hello friends. Marcus D coming at you with a brand new video I'm producing for the Great Questions group on this Thursday, the 23rd of May, 2024. And today, folks, this evening, I'm bringing you a video entitled The ATP Synthase Nanomotor. Subtitle, A Microscopic Power-Generating Molecular Turbine Operating in every living system, every living system, but every living cell on this planet. And folks, I just recently became aware of this, and it really kind of stirred me up. And so I thought, you know what, I'd take a moment and share this with you folks. I decided I kind of preempted myself again. I want to do a little video, as I mentioned, as I concluded the last video, that just shares you kind of my journey in beginning to read my Bible and the different Bibles that I have, and just some thoughts on that, which I think would be illuminating. But anyway, I found out about this, and folks, you know, one of my little life proverbs is a perpetual student. I love to be a continuous learner, and I want to focus that learning, if that makes sense. We're living in an age where there's just such a deluge of information available all around us, and a lot of it is just honestly not really worth paying attention to, because it's not really that worthwhile. It's not going to impact, at least for me, folks. I'm interested in things that are of value, that are going to impact me in the long run, and in this case, the greatest long run. Okay, but anyway, you know, these things continue to build my faith. I've mentioned that before, because the more we have discovered, and not just myself, but everybody, the entire scientific community, the more the cell has become open to our understanding, it is mind-blowing, the complexity of what's going on in there. And for those of us that are willing to, you know, objectively consider the implications of that complexity, it, you know, just quite frankly points to a designer. And I see that, okay, clearly. And so when I see these things going on in there, it just makes my belief skyrocket that much more. It's pretty high already. But it also, folks, it underscores and validates the value of what we're doing here, of what I'm doing here, in the sense of those of us that are interested in getting to know this great God, because this isn't a pipe dream. This isn't make-believe. This is something that is going to be amply rewarded one day, and perhaps soon. So let's get to this little topic here. I actually received another one of these quote lesson sheets that the Creation Evidence Museum sends out. And this particular one is actually dealing with water and also carbon, and how unique they are and necessary they are to all the living systems on this planet. Look, folks, let me mention something to you. God does not do random. All right, even though human beings don't necessarily understand the interplay of all the various systems and why things work the way they do in living systems, non-living systems, the more we do begin to understand, the more we see the interrelationship between all these various parts, and how it's been termed. Actually, the founder of this particular museum uses this term, creation in symphony, a symphonic creation where all the parts work together. It goes back to that quote by Albert Einstein: "The harmony of natural law reveals an intelligence of such superiority that compared with it, all the systematic thinking of human beings is utterly insignificant." All right? And folks, you know, when you've got somebody like him saying that, and a declaration of that magnitude, and as we begin to see these things in operation, all these different aspects of this creation, the mind of God is incomprehensible, the capacity he has. And especially when we realize that all of this together is not consuming any of his resources. He's infinite, which is just a mind-blowing reality too, but again underscores the value of doing this. So anyway, I got this little lesson sheet, and I like, again, I read a lot of different things all the time, but this had a couple of very, very interesting things in it. And actually, kind of as a little extracurricular, because it was talking about carbon, I'm going to share one quick little tidbit with you, that they referred to something in here that I had never heard of before. I'm not even talking about the little nanomotor yet, but this is dealing with the amount of carbon in the environment. And there's a lot of that going on now. We hear a lot of talk about, climate change, global warming, and, and the carbon footprint, all these different terms. And that, the human beings and our carbon output is causing this climate change, which, a lot of people believe the jury is still out on that. And I want to read you something here from a scientific standpoint that I didn't know about, which kind of is something interesting to consider. And it deals with the different aspects of this planet that actually store carbon. So let me just quickly read this to you. It's kind of interesting because it says carbon is found in and is exchanged between global reservoirs. Okay? These global reservoirs are the atmosphere, the ocean, terrestrial plant biomass, so in other words, all the plants, and soil. The balance, now listen to this, the balance of carbon between these reservoirs is important for life. The ocean stores approximately 50 times more actively cycled carbon than the atmosphere, making it the largest carbon reservoir. In addition, carbon, now listen to this, is rapidly exchanged between the ocean and the atmosphere in order to maintain equilibrium. Did you all get that? Okay, I'm going to read that part again, all right? The ocean stores approximately 50 times more actively cycled carbon than the atmosphere. And that's one of the things we hear talking about, that's the carbon in the atmosphere that's, building up and building up. And, if you listen to this, the ocean's storing 50 more times, but also the fact that that this carbon is rapidly, these systems can rapidly interchange the amount of carbon between the ocean and the atmosphere in order to maintain equilibrium. So what does that tell you? And this is actually from a Harvard University study. Okay, so these folks aren't even necessarily creationists. They're just quoting this study that's being done. So I'm reading that and I'm thinking, well, wait a minute. And I didn't know that. I didn't even know any of that went on. All right, but again, it's just another aspect of the finely balanced components that are actually necessary for human beings to live on this planet. Look, I'll say this to you. The more we understand about this entire universe and everything going on in it, it all seems like, and I don't think it's just it seems, it all seems like it's all put together and operating specifically for the purpose of keeping us alive on this planet. And it's quite the contrast to this often spoken idea that we're just a random planet, a little speck of dust out somewhere. I'm going to repeat something else to you that's important for us to remember. That significance is not based upon size. It is based upon complexity, all right? And human beings are the most complex physical system in the entire known universe. We've talked about that, especially the human brain. All right, and so that's why, even though we're compared to the overall universe, we're tiny. We are by far the most complex systems that we know of anywhere. And again, it is that complexity that determines how important or significant we are. Okay, in that universe. All right. So with that in mind, what I want to talk about next is I want to talk about these little motors. That are operating in the cell. There's something called ATP, all right? ATP, there's a scientific name for it. I'll probably read it to you in a minute. Adenosine triphosphate, I believe is what it's called. But it is the battery, the fuel cell, if you will, that operates inside of every living cell on this planet, all right? I've known about that. And then what they've talked about is something called and let me back up and let me just say this to you. This battery, like a normal battery, all right, has to be recharged. It's used to power all kinds of things in the body, or inside the cell. Now, inside the cell, we're talking about inside the individual cells. And just like any normal battery, it needs to be recharged, okay? Now, the way these little molecules, and that's what this ATP is, the way they are recharged is they're recharged through an apparatus, if you will. That's what I've always heard it was, called ATP synthase. Now, I don't know if you're like me. When I heard the word synthase, I thought, well, maybe it's just some kind of chemical compound. I didn't really understand, all right? But folks, what it really is a molecular machine, another one, operating within the cell that is just amazing, and how it operates and what it does and its design and the speed at which it is capable of operating. To recharge these little batteries that every living cell need. And so what I want to do very quickly here is I just want to read you a little bit about this. And then what I've actually done is I did a little research online, and I found there were actually a number of videos that are animated that will actually show you kind of what this looks like. All right, I've got a little picture here. Maybe I'll hold up and show you so they can give you a little bit of an idea of it. But what's interesting is, and I'll just mention this now, is the terminology that the different videos use. The one I'm actually going to attach and share with you here is one that was actually done by somebody who believes in intelligent design. Because you can't look at a molecular motor like this and believe that it could happen by chance. I mean, it's just, there's no, as we've talked about many times, there's no way scientifically that can happen for a variety of reasons. That's not what the purpose of this video is. But you know, if we were to go out somewhere and find a lawnmower or an outboard engine, or, you know, again, a cell phone or something like that, we know intuitively they are not going to pop into existence by themselves. All right, anything that has complexity like that. All right, so let's just talk a little bit about these guys, and then you know, we'll kind of bring this to conclusion. But it is just amazing. Okay, ATP, adenosine triphosphate, is a nearly universal battery in life forms. And again, these are quoting folks that are not creationists, okay? They're evolutionists in the main, but they're saying some of these things, and I'm going to point out a couple of things afterwards, all right? The universal battery in life forms with a carbon coupling base using water in its process. Again, talking about the importance of carbon in water, but that's not, you know, although it's very interesting, but it would make this message extremely long. And I already kind of did one little side note with that, you know, the carbon reservoirs. So I want to kind of stay on point now with this nanomotor, right? You know, and right there, folks, synthase. You know, like I said, the terminology is a little bit misleading. You know, they should really call it, you know, the ATP power generator, which it really, you know, really is, turbine generator. Okay, so let's continue going on here. All right. Once charged, it can be, quote, plugged into a variety of molecular machines to perform a wide variety of functions, such as activating amino acids for protein synthesis, copying DNA, and even here the terminology, untangling DNA. It's not untangling it, it's unwinding it in a very, very specific way to expose the code for a particular protein or another part that needs to be replicated in the cell, all right? So it's not just, and again, it's just interesting to listen to the different types of terminology they use to describe these things. Just trying to do what they can with wordsmithing to make it just sound random and, you know, just happen by itself, when the reality is, again, these are all highly specified, highly designed, highly organized, unbelievably complex systems that are operating inside of living systems, all right, which again, in the whole are just astoundingly complex, All right. So it's talking about, again, it was talking about, and then it goes breaking bonds, transporting molecules, and even contracting muscles. All right. It is really interesting. Like rechargeable batteries, ATP cycles frequently between power, and here it is, powering gadgets and recharging. No, these are highly specified molecular machines and operations going on inside the cell that are, again, astoundingly complex. All right. Now listen to this, though. This is amazing. All right. So it's talking about here, although the human body contains only about 60 grams of ATP at any given moment, it is estimated that humans regenerate approximately their own weight in ATP molecules every day and then use them up in the process. Now, did you get that? I mean, if you're not familiar with the metric system, 60 grams is 2.1 ounces. All right? So you and I have roughly 2 ounces, 60 grams of these batteries, right? This ATP compound, these batteries in our bodies, and split up in all of our individual cells. All right. One of the videos I was watching was saying, it's even ATP that allows our brains to function because all these cells need this energy. All right. But did you get that these little generators that I'm going to be talking about here in a moment, in my case, I guess, produce 165 pounds of ATP every day. All right, that's cycled. In other words, they keep recharging it and recharging it and recharging it. All right, that's pretty amazing, even in and of itself, right there. All right. Now it goes on here. All right, and for those of you that know anything about cellular biology at all, there are these. What do you want to call them? Apparatus. They're actually called organelles inside of a cell that are called mitochondria. I remember studying, learning about that, not studying it, but just learning about it in school and a little bit afterwards. But, again, they just kind of show it to you, and they always called them the power plants, but I never really understood why. And now the reason being is because they are incredibly complex inside, but they house these little generators, and the way they do, the way they operate is quite amazing. All right, and so what's also interesting, and I'm going to read this to you here, that in generating this ATP, there's actually way more than that, but just keeping it simple, there are 3 absolutely necessary components. And you'll see that in the graphic video. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to point it out to you. But as a matter of fact, again, this is a little bit small, all right? But this is what that puppy looks like, all right there. All right, and what I want to do, all right, is they're going to talk about there are 3 absolutely necessary components for this little generator to operate. Now, what's interesting here, and again, I'm not going to elaborate too much because you're going to see it in the graphic, the animated video that I'm going to, include. Okay. But what you have here, this is actually a membrane inside that mitochondria. This membrane itself and how it's structured and how it operates is really amazing in and of itself. And how does this form? What makes all this, in other words, it's just amazing, the design that's in all of this. And then what we have here is we have a motor, and then we have a shaft again, all right? And this shaft on the end has got a cam. And then there are these 6 parts on top. And what happens is this shaft, okay? Now what's interesting is these 6 little egg-looking like things, okay? And these are all highly structured molecular proteins. These remain, what's the word I'm saying? They don't move. The shaft inside moves, all right? And this is the machinery here, this little machine, this little turbine machine that's ion powered, okay, turns this little shaft, and it's got a cam on it, and every time it spins around, it produces 3 of these ATPs. All right, the spent batteries come back, and then they're recharged as this thing spins. And folks, this little cam can spin at 7,800 RPMs. Okay, I mean, folks, it's mind-blowing. So let me just point out something, all right? And you know what's interesting too? I'll read this to you, and then I'm going to point one other thing out. Its generation and usage requires A, a membrane, B, a mechanism for pumping protons across the membrane. The protons those are the ions. That's the fuel that powers this pump, okay? Excuse me. It's the fuel that powers this generator, all right? And it talks about a mechanism for producing and recharging the ATP molecule. Okay, so in other words, there are three absolutely necessary components, for this little generator guy to operate. But what they're not showing you, they show you the membrane here, they show you the actual generator, but then there's actually in this membrane a pump. Okay, another molecular machine that I want to study a little bit about too. I've heard about it. I've heard it referred to. If you watched it, folks, if you watched that other video that I sent the link to in a previous video that I did that was called Unlocking the Mysteries of Life, they referred to that pump, all right? They also referred to the bacterial flagellum motor, another molecular motor that operates with the same type of setup, except that puppy can turn at 100,000 RPMs, all right? Which is just amazing. But they referred to that pump, and I'm like, I didn't really understand what that pump was for. But that pump, what it does is there has to be, without getting into too much detail, you'll see this, there are actually ions on both sides of this membrane, all right? And what these ions, there's a greater concentration of them on one side than there are on the other side. And these ions, okay, will flow through this little machine, this generator, it's a turbine is what it is. That's why we call that. It's a turbine. They'll flow through this, and it's amazing how they do that. You'll see that in the animation. And that's what spins this puppy, all right? But there has to be a pump, okay, to create that imbalance, that gradient, if you will, more on one side than the other side, all right? Now, here's what it says here, all right? And again, that's another molecular machine. And it says, these three components are highly complex in all of life and are interdependent to provide the energy for life. What do they mean by that, folks? All three of those components have to be in place, fully functional and operational right from the start, or none of it will work. All right, it's been called an irreducibly complex system. All the components have to be in place, functional, in operation for it to work. Because that pump works on ATP, all right? And this membrane is sustained by the ATP because this membrane is all made up of individual molecules as well that will break down. So it's really pretty amazing, all right? Now, let me just read this little part to you. And then I'm just going to review my notes here and make sure that I have it, and we'll be done. But, it's just amazing to see the complexity of all of this. I mean, what's really going on in these bodies of ours, and it brings to light that scripture that's in Acts, but it's really referred to in so many different places. I'm thinking of that the 139th Psalm, that I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. But in Acts it says that it's in Him that we live and move and have our being. Because, folks, all these systems have to be maintained. I'll mention one. I started mentioning it too, and I don't think I finished. But because the fact that the component up top here, these six, generating parts, if you will, have to remain stationary, there's actually a brace that comes up and holds on to these guys so they don't turn, so that just the camshaft, as it will, as it's spinning inside, it turns, but these guys stay steady. So if you look on the outside, and you'll see this really well, and you can see that little pink, that magenta piece, and that actually, again, is a structure designed there to hold the upper part. It's embedded in the membrane, so it's anchored, but it holds those six egg-like looking structures still, so that as that cam inside spins, and it says up to 7,800 RPMs, which it's just amazing, okay? Pardon me, I bumped the mic here. They stay in place, okay? And it's going to say that here, I think. The generating unit, ATP synthase, is an electrical nanomotor with some subunits that remain fixed and other subunits that rotate. And again, they call it a merry-go-round. This merry-go-round can spin at 7,800 RPMs per minute. It's not a merry-go-round, folks. It's, again, a highly complex generator. Turbine generator is what it is, okay? Each complete rotation generates 3 charged ATP molecules, which can then serve as the universal battery for life. Isn't that amazing? So, again, folks, these systems point absolutely and completely to a creator. And again, as I'll wrap it up with how I started this, it makes this pursuit because folks, this creator knows our thoughts. All right, he is beyond our comprehension, and again, he is not a physical being. I mean, Christ, when he came to earth, was a physical being. Okay, but again, God, Jesus himself said about his Father, God is a spirit, and Christ in his essence is a spirit. The Holy Spirit is a spirit. They're a different order of being. They are not bound by space and time as we know it. God is everywhere at the same time. He is infinite. He's omnipresent. He's omniscient. So he knows every single thought that's going on in our head. And when we have a desire to know him and to want to understand these things and understand his creation, which again builds our faith because we see the absolute need of a designer, and then we want to get to know him and connect with him, what all this does, folks, at least it does for me, and I'm sure it does for a lot of y'all. I hope it does. I hope it does that for all of y'all. It makes this effort worthwhile, all right? Because we have to do this on one level by faith. All right, that's one of the things that he says honors him. So even though we have all this evidence, even though it's pointing conclusively to that, and we can get to know, we have his indwelling spirit in us now. And again, it's just amazing, this paradox of that we know him, and yet, again, we have to have this faith walk. But when we see all these things, I know that this is not a vain thing that we're doing, that I hope you're doing. If you're listening to this, I know you're doing, okay, because you want to learn a little bit of this stuff too, and like I do. I mean, the last day I want to learn is the day I leave this life, and I have a feeling that's when we're really going to start learning. I think we're going to be learning for all eternity. He's an infinite God. There will be no stagnation. There'll be no boredom. There'll be no. It's going to be constant, more and better. And I believe we're going to have an infinite capacity to learn in eternity. Because we're literally going to be the children of God, the sons and daughters of God, even though genders, we know it will be gone by then, okay? We're going to have something way, way better. So, yeah, there you go, folks. The ATP Synthase Nanomotor, the microscopic, power-generating molecular turbine operating in every living cell that points to the absolute necessity of an incredible designer who has declared that he loves us with a love that passes knowledge, and he didn't just say it, he demonstrated it by coming to this earth through his son, and then paying our sin debt for us, so that we can not only be forgiven and be, heaven bound, but literally transformed, folks, into an incipiently divine being. Our destiny is beyond our comprehension. And all of these aspects validate that, okay? So God bless you. Marcus D signing off. And we'll be in touch. Looking forward to bringing you that next video, which I trust will be talking about the Bible a little bit, which, again, is definitely going to be, I think, something that'll bless you guys too. Okay, take care. Bye-bye.